Imagine a man with an appetite so wild that no matter what he ate, even things that weren't food, he was never satisfied. In the heart of 18th century France lived a man whose hunger knew no limits. He could eat his weight in meat, swallow live animals without flinching, and even shock doctors with what he consumed behind hospital walls. His name was Tarrare. Was he a medical mystery, a cursed soul, or something far stranger? This isn't just the story of a man who couldn't stop eating. It's one of the most bizarre and unsettling tales in human history, and you're about to find out why. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Monroe, and today's episode of Bizarre Lunchtime Tales dives into the strange case of Tarrare, the man who ate everything. Stay tuned, because after his story, I've got a bonus case for you, a dead man who was dug up and put on trial. I've covered these stories before, but this time they're remastered with more details, more context, and more of the strange truth behind them. As bizarre as they sound, these stories are 100% real. So, Tarrare was born near Lyon, France, around 1772. From the very beginning, his appetite was monstrous. I mean, even as a child, it was reported that he could eat a quarter of a cow in a single day. Yeah, an entire quarter of a cow. When I first read that, I was honestly shocked. It sounds impossible, right? You'd think anyone would throw up or pass out after eating like that. But not Tarrare. He just kept eating, whatever he could get his hands on. No matter how much food he devoured, he was always thin, pale, and sickly looking. His parents tried to keep up, but his hunger became unbearable. They could barely afford to keep him full, so eventually, they just kicked him out. And it wasn't out of cruelty, it was pure desperation. Out on his own, Tarrare began wandering the streets of France. By his teenage years, he joined a traveling group of performers, using his grotesque appetite to earn money. Crowds would gather in disbelief as he swallowed corks, stones, entire baskets of apples, rinds and all. But his favorite trick, the most horrifying one of all, swallowing live animals. He'd crush eels between his teeth and gulp them whole, their bodies writhing down his throat. People were so shocked that some screamed, others fainted. But Tarrare didn't care. He was too busy eating. Eventually, Tarrare's strange talents landed him in a hospital. He joined the French Revolutionary Army, but quickly became a problem. His rations for one soldier were never enough. He was ravenous, always starving, and needed a lot more food. And once again, no one could afford to keep up with his appetite. Even when they gave him 4 times the normal amount of food, he still scavenged through waste and gutters, desperate for something, anything, to fill him. At the military hospital in Soultz-Outrain, doctors were fascinated. They fed him enormous meals, yet somehow he was still hungry. Physically, Tarrare was like something out of a medical horror story. His jaws could stretch unnaturally wide. His teeth were yellow, rotting. His stomach ballooned grotesquely after he ate, then hung loose, like a deflated sack when empty. His skin was hot, sweaty, and the smell. One doctor said you could catch his scent from across the room. They tried everything to stop his appetite: vinegar, tobacco pills, even laudanum, an opiate, but nothing worked. His hunger couldn't be dulled. It was as if something else was eating him from the inside. Some of the doctors began to wonder, was this man simply sick? Or was there something truly monstrous living within him? They had never seen anything like it. During the war with Prussia, French officials saw an unusual opportunity. If Tarrare could swallow anything, maybe, just maybe, he could be useful. So they decided to turn him into a spy. They had him swallow a small wooden box with a secret message inside. If he could pass it intact, he'd be the perfect courier. And to their surprise, he did. The box came out the other end without a scratch. So they sent him across enemy lines, disguised as a German peasant. But things didn't exactly go as planned. Tarrare didn't speak a word of German. He wandered aimlessly, acting strange, and it didn't take long before he was captured. The Prussians beat him until he confessed everything. Then they tied him to a toilet, waiting for that box to pass through his system. And when it finally did, they opened it, only to find a fake message inside. It was a test mission. Enraged, the Prussians nearly executed him, but instead they let him go, dumping him at the border, beaten, broken, and starving. Back in France, Tarrare returned to the doctors who had studied him before. He begged them for help, desperate to be cured of his endless hunger. But nothing worked, and soon his behavior took an even darker turn. He was caught drinking the blood of other hospital patients. Nurses claimed he was sneaking into the morgue at night to eat the flesh of the dead. Then the unthinkable happened. Something so terrible, it's hard to even imagine him going to this extreme. I mean, this was horrifying, even for him. At the hospital where he was staying, a 14-month-old baby vanished. No one saw what happened, but everyone knew who they suspected. Tarrare was chased out by the staff, never to return. He vanished into the streets once more, an outcast, haunted by his own hunger. And you can just imagine being so tormented by your own body that you become the very thing you fear. Tarrare wasn't just hungry anymore. He was consumed by his appetite. 4 years later, Tarrare reappeared in a hospital in Versailles. He was dying, reportedly from tuberculosis. But his final days were just as grotesque as his life. His body was literally rotting from the inside out. The stench was so unbearable that even seasoned doctors refused to continue his autopsy. Still, they saw enough to be horrified. His stomach was abnormally large, ulcerated, swollen with decay. His internal organs were filled with pus and rot. Some believed he had a massive tapeworm living inside him, consuming him from within. Others thought he had a malformed brain, maybe damage to the amygdala, the part that controls impulse and hunger. But those were only guesses. His body didn't just look sick. It looked possessed by hunger itself. In the end, no one ever truly understood what made Tarrare the way he was. His corpse, like his life, was a mystery. Modern scientists have tried to explain Tarrare's condition. Some believe he suffered from polyphagia, a disorder that causes insatiable hunger. Others suggest hyperthyroidism, a condition that speeds up the metabolism to deadly levels. Some have even proposed parasites, like a tapeworm, that might have been feeding inside him for years. But none of these theories explain how he survived swallowing sharp objects, live animals, and rotten flesh without dying long before he did. Was he a victim of nature or something darker? Tarrare's story doesn't just baffle doctors, it haunts them. He remains one of the strangest, most horrifying medical mysteries in history. Tarrare's story remains one of history's strangest mysteries. Was he cursed, sick, or something science still can't explain? If you thought this story was bizarre, wait until you hear the next one. It's about a dead man who was dug up and actually put on trial. Imagine it. Rome, 897 AD. The air is cold, the basilica dimly lit by candlelight. In those crumbling halls, church officials gather in silence. At the center, slumped on a Gothic throne, is the corpse of a pope, his decaying body still dressed in full papal robes. He's not here to be buried. He's here to be judged. Yes, this is the true story of a dead man on trial. This is the Cadaver Synod. In one of the most disturbing and surreal chapters in church history, Pope Formosus, who had been dead and buried for nearly a year, was exhumed, dressed in full ceremonial robes, and brought before a synod of angry clergy to answer for crimes he supposedly committed while alive. It sounds like something out of a horror film, but it actually happened, and you're about to hear all the details. The scene was as grotesque as it was symbolic. A political vendetta disguised as justice, a corpse accused, a puppet trial, and a legacy the church would struggle to bury. Oh, who was Pope Formosus? Well, he was a complicated figure. Before ascending to the papacy, he served as the Bishop of Porto and was actually pretty respected for his intellect. But, he was also tangled up in the violent, messy politics of that era. He was excommunicated once, then reinstated, and then, in 891, elected pope. I mean, that alone tells you how chaotic things were. But his actions during his papacy, especially the alliances he made, earned him some powerful enemies. In early 897, Pope Stephen ordered that Formosus's body be exhumed from its tomb. The corpse was bloated, discolored, waterlogged from decay. And yet, despite all that, attendants were ordered to dress the dead pope in full papal vestments, crown, robes, and all. I mean, can you even imagine what they were thinking? Being forced to dig up a dead, decaying man and prepare him for a trial? The corpse was then placed upright on a throne in the Basilica of St. John Lateran, and that's when the synod began. The scene defies belief. Stephen VI, in full papal authority, stood before the rotting corpse of his predecessor and shouted accusations at him. The charges? Violating church law, perjury, and holding multiple bishoprics at once. A deacon was even appointed to speak on behalf of the dead pope, answering for him, as if this were a real trial. But of course, it wasn't. This was a show trial, a humiliation ritual, a spectacle for the living, and a warning to anyone who dared cross the church. And, unsurprisingly, Pope Formosus, despite being dead, was found guilty. The verdict was brutal. Formosus's papacy was declared invalid. All of his acts and ordinations were annulled. And then came the desecration. His blessing fingers, the very ones used to perform sacred rites, were cut from his corpse. He was stripped of his vestments, dragged through the streets of Rome, and finally tossed into the Tiber River. Even in a violent and chaotic era, this act shocked the people of Rome. The outrage spread quickly. Soon after the trial, Pope Stephen VI was imprisoned, and later found strangled in his cell. The body of Formosus, believed to have been recovered from the river, was eventually given a proper burial. Later popes declared the Cadaver Synod null and void. His legacy was restored, and the church quietly swore off posthumous trials altogether. The Cadaver Synod wasn't about justice. It wasn't about God. It was about power, revenge, ego. It showed just how far leaders were willing to go to protect their authority, even if it meant desecrating the dead. And while Pope Formosus never spoke a word at his own trial, his silence spoke volumes about the corruption festering within the walls of power. Was Pope Stephen VI insane, or just a man trying to erase his past? I don't know. What do you think? History is full of strange and disturbing tales, but the trial of a dead pope and a man who could eat anything and never be full, those two stories, they're in a league of their own. So, what do you think about these odd and bizarre tales? Have you ever heard of them before? I'd really love to know your thoughts down below. If you enjoy dark history, unsolved mysteries, and bizarre events from the past, please like, subscribe, and drop me a comment. I'm Ivy Monroe, and until next time, stay curious.